15, I was waking up in trolleys in high streets. I was waking up in bushes, like before school. I was just a scared little kid. I was smoking 40 cigarettes a day. You kind of wake up and think, do I want this life?
Today we're joined by Josh White, co-founder of Cano Water. He went on a mission against plastic pollution and received backing from Ricky Gervais. This isn't your average entrepreneur story.
How the do you source water?
Let me just say this, no one knew how to put water in a can. We had to order a minimum of 150,000 cans of each still and sparkling,
Wow.
So we couldn't do that. So what we did is we created this fake brand with a fake prototype, we wrapped the can. The big corporates don't give a about the planet. Companies were paying businesses to not work with Cano Water.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a cartel. When I started to go for meetings with charities who said that they cared about sustainability and then basically said afterwards that they can't commit because they've got a big sponsor and their sponsor turned out to be...
What does your notes look like for your business ideas? Josh, thanks so much for joining me on the Ambitious Minds podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We were having a conversation just now off air, and you said that companies would do anything in their power to prioritise profit over the planet. Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, so listen, we started this business with one thing in mind, and that was to do good because of what we had seen in Thailand, which was essentially loads of plastic bottles and loads of sort of plastic particles and plastic pieces on a Thailand beach, which
I've seen this before as well.
Exactly.
Lamai in Koh Samui. Yes. Was so bad.
Exactly. And it's scary. And when starting the business, we always said let's put planet before profit. We wanted to build a brand that made noise and essentially scared the big players to go into cans because cans are a lot more recyclable than a plastic bottle. But in 10 years we've learned a lot, we've seen a lot, and companies will protect their profits and they might claim that they care, and they might say that they care, and they may have a whole page on their website about sustainability, and they all will have sustainability teams. But when it comes to it, people do care a lot more about profit before planet, which is their businesses at the end of the day. But I think what's a massive shame is they're talking about net zero and, being better and doing better, but essentially won't actually make a move at times, and I think that it's, I wouldn't say it's lying, but it is not being so transparent to the consumer, which is, a massive shame.
It's virtue signalling. They're saying they're doing one thing, but they're not necessarily doing it behind the scenes. Have you actually experienced something in your business where you were concerned that doing something different, choosing aluminium cans, was not going to lead to profits? And if it doesn't lead to profits, you've got no business. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we as a business have probably been hit with every single major issue, global issue, whether it be COVID, Brexit, wars, tariffs, taxes. I mean, it's really been one thing after the other for us. And aluminium's a commodity. It's expensive. It's not cheap. Plastic it's a bit of a false economy. It's cheap, really cheap, and look where it ends up. It ends up essentially polluting our planet. And there's real deep dangers when it comes to plastic, whether it be health. The microplastics thing is like out of sight, out of mind. It's 100 times worse than we think. The thing that I'm most proud about is starting this category and pioneering it and raising awareness of it. Because before we sort of started, no one was talking about sustainability within drinks. I think the most difficult thing for a business like ours is, you need, as a business, you have to make money, to stay alive. But we've chosen a category, really. It's a difficult category. You're going up against, players that essentially are a lot more, cheaper than you and have got a lot more money and infrastructure. So I'm I'm most proud of what we've started. I think, you know, the next step for us is, you know, what does the next 10 years look for us, and how, you know, how do we innovate, you know, which I mentioned to you before. But, you know, the category that we started and the brand that we started is in a very different position than it was when we first started, because costs of anything are rising. And, you know, starting any business, you know, it's funny, you know, you talk about, you know, people talk about recession, you know. For many people, it's going to be the greatest time to start a business.
Yeah,
and for other, you know, for other brands, it's going to be the worst time ever for a recession to hit. And we're going to see a lot of, you know, whether it be redundancies or businesses going under. And it's a scary time for some, and it's a really exciting time for others. And I think as a CEO and as a founder and you know, entrepreneur or whatever you want to call it, you've got to really you've got to be ahead of the curve. You've got to see what's coming, and sometimes you can't. So it's a really difficult time. But I feel like for me at the moment, it's probably where in 10 years' time I'm going to say that I learned my most as an entrepreneur. If I'm honest with you.
How old are you now?
How old do you think I am? Let's do this on this podcast. How old?
30 to 32, I'd say.
34.
Oh, are you? Okay, so same age as me.
34. Yeah.
So when did you start the business?
I started the business with the others came up with the idea in 2014. We kind of did all of our development in 2015. We launched in 2016. So from 21 and 22, really, years old, we were, I think it was 21, I was just about to turn 22 when we sort of went to Thailand.
So you talk about the next 10 years ahead, and you're going to learn a lot in that 10 years. You're only going to be in your mid-40s.
Correct.
Early to mid-40s. Yeah. And the amount of life experience you're going to have had.
But you know what is funny? Like, I feel old at the moment. It's funny.
It's
my own. And we'll talk about my previous journey of life. But I feel like I've had like 10 lives until now. And when someone says to me, "You're still young," I refuse to believe it, because I feel knackered. But when I look at, you know, the grand scheme of things, you know, I've got so much to give and so much, I hope, please God, more of my life, but I feel old. I feel old.
Let's go back to the start then. So you said there about your previous life as one of your lives. What was it? Explain that to me.
So, very troubled youth. You know, speak about this a lot. In, you know, and I'm a very open character, and I think that I haven't always been an open character, but the reason I am an open character is because I believe I've got a lot to give. I think that, you know, we live in a society where people hold back from telling their truths, and I think that no life is perfect, you know, and mine is far from perfect. So, you know, troubled youth, got in a lot of trouble, was never one well behaved at school, diagnosed with ADHD at 11. Okay. Didn't know what ADHD was. You know, ADHD now, it's funny, like, everyone's sober now and everyone's got ADHD. And for me, when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I was looked at as being just like the problem child.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I've had my addiction battles as well, which for many, many years, I looked at myself as being an outsider. But, you know, as far as I could remember, I just didn't fit in. But the funny thing is, I had so many friends. I was the most sociable person, massive extrovert, very, very sociable person, but just felt so out of place and out of touch, and really felt lost.
Is that society? Because my brother, he'll resonate with a lot of what you're saying here, because he's now been diagnosed with ADHD, but that was the age of 30. It now explains why he was the troubled kid in school, but he was the class clown. He was funny. He had loads of friends around him.
Exactly the same.
He was really, really popular.
Yeah.
But he was written off in school. Yeah. So, and my question here is about the society that it doesn't know, or maybe it does now, but it didn't then know how to deal with kids who are neurodivergent, who are just a bit different. Because what do we do in school? We ask people to sit there in a classroom from the time 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. with a couple of breaks in between, and look at a board or look at a teacher and listen to every word they're saying and take it in and then just regurgitate it.
Yeah. There's there's another. It's like living in like an alternate reality. There's another world. It's like living in a world where like we're here and then ghosts are living among us. So being neurodivergent, having ADHD and having mental health, it's like living in a bit in Narnia. I can't explain it. It's like you feel like you're living, you know that you're living in it, but you feel so far from reality. Okay. I used to wake up every morning and I went on medication for a little bit, and I'll sort of get into that, but I used to wake up every morning with 1,000 voices in my head. Okay. And that's what, you know, people ask me what it's like to have ADHD. It's like, you just imagine like waking up and there's 1,000,000 voices just screaming at you, and you just can't concentrate, and you can't put pen to paper, you can't write a to-do list, and if you do, you're not concentrating on that to-do list, and you lose things and you leave things, and you just feel completely out of touch. And then you take a pill and everything just
really,
yeah, it's the weirdest thing. But what that did to me was, it was good. And for the short term, it was great. But for the long term, it was terrible. That's where my addictions came into place. The medication was very addictive. I also wasn't me anymore.
Yeah, so it suppressed you?
The creativeness that I am and the class clown, that just went. So I went from being literally what you just described, that class clown, everyone loved me, to just being a bit like a robot.
Interesting.
And then I kind of rebelled from that robot, and I started drinking, and I got into addiction, and I was so unhappy, and that's where the addiction came in. And it's funny because addiction and ADHD are linked, 100% linked. I mean, most addicts have got some form of ADHD or autism. You know, it's all on that spectrum. And the reason is because I always needed something, and this is where entrepreneurialism or whatever it is comes into my future. But I always needed something to sort of get me to that baseline. Every single day is a new challenge, and it's quite weird. I look at most people, like your average person, like they'll just sort of, it's just plain sailing through life. It's just never been like that for me. Like every day feels like a week to get through for someone with ADHD and someone with mental health problems. And I just hated life, and I didn't know what it was that was going to get me to that baseline. So I was on the medication, and I just basically just started drinking. And drinking, essentially, it got me to that baseline. It did for me. Like, it filled the void in me, and it got me to this place where I was so sociable and everyone wanted to be my friend. And I mentioned like that lost feeling that you mentioned that your brother had, even though he was, you know, so popular. Drinking got me to like a place of where like I could hide. I could hide, and it got me to a place where I felt like, oh, actually, you know what? This is me. I can't explain it. And I felt the same with cigarettes. You know, I felt the same with, you know, certain drugs as a kid, where I just felt like it filled that void. Now I know now that that's not the route, but fast forward like 2 years, I, you know, had a full-blown alcohol addiction
whilst you were in school.
While I was in school, drinking every single day at school, taking bottles of Evian, ironically, into school filled with vodka, and just sipping it throughout the whole day.
How did the teachers not know?
They didn't know until they knew in the end, because actually, funny enough, a friend of mine took a swig of my water, thinking it was water, and it wasn't. Okay, and then it all got back to my parents, and then it got back to the school. But by that point, I went from being the most sociable person to being the person that no one wanted to be around.
Wow.
You know, most parents were like, "Stay away from Josh." I became I would say a bad person. But do you know what? Inside, I wasn't bad.
Yeah.
I was a good person, but I hated everything. I didn't want anyone to see the real me, which honestly was a scared little kid who just didn't want anyone to, I didn't want to be vulnerable in front of anyone. You know, the fact that I could talk so openly today, like versus then, you know, I didn't want anyone to see the real me. I was so lost, I was so angry. And essentially, you know, at 15, I was waking up in trolleys in high streets. I was waking up in bushes, like before school. I was getting into trouble, getting into fights and getting arrested. And I was just a scared little kid. I was smoking 40 cigarettes a day at 15.
How do you afford that?
I'll be honest with you. I would do. I couldn't afford it, but I would do anything to get it. Borrowing, stealing. I was going down. You know, I talk about this with a lot of people. We're all going down a path. Okay. At any point, you can change your path. I don't believe it's ever too late in life, but it's up to you. Okay. And I believe that everyone has it in them to change the course of their life. Listen, like, some people have it harder than others, and we're all in different, you know, we've all got different environments, and that is a big part to play in it. And it's unfair to sort of say that everyone has that same ability, because some people, you know, their parents can just, or their family members can just buy them out of it, and they can, you know, they've got a better opportunity at getting rescued. Do you know what I mean? Whereas other people, they don't, and it is difficult. But what I've learned is that only you can do it in the end. Because even if people rescue you, it's funny, the wealthiest people I know, they, you know, I know some people that, you know, their family members will rescue them, and they'll never ever learn. And then there's other people that I know that have ended up on the streets and they've picked themselves up because they haven't got a way out. Yeah. You know, so I think that it really comes down to your own mind. The most important thing is getting there. That's the hardest thing, is getting the mind. And I believe, I think it was David Goggins, it's like what I've learned over the years is that it's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Once you get over a hurdle, it's easier to get over another hurdle. I think I learned very, very early in life. You know, my mum got diagnosed with cancer, and my grandma did as well. Then my brother got diagnosed with cancer. My cousin had testicular cancer. All within the space of 5 years. My mum, who was an alcoholic, was at a very young age, after me, funny enough, after I went into rehab, she spent a lot of time in rehab. And then, you know, within that, my sister, within 10 years, I think I experienced what most people would never experience. I suffered some severe heartbreak with, you know, an ex-girlfriend, and got cheated on, and all of these things. When I was in it, I lost a business as well. When I was in it, I'll be honest with you, I would have killed myself. I genuinely was in that place of wanting to kill myself. And remember, all of this is before Cano, so we'll get to Cano. But the funny thing is that when I was in it, I thought that I couldn't deal with it. It's after it. Because, you know, one thing that I learned as a kid is that when all of those things happened, you get all the sympathy from all of your mates. You get all the messages. I hope you're right, mate. The day after it, it's you. Yeah. You know, and I remember, I'm sober at this point. I'd gone into rehab. I'd got clean, which was a whirlwind. But essentially, it's about that. It's about that resilience, and it's about that sort of getting thick-skinned. But it's about learning that it's only you that is going to take yourself from here to here, and that's really difficult. And I think, you know, when you wake up in rehab at 15 years old, and you meet people who are potentially you in 30, 40 years, and, you know, most of them are dead now or have still got problems, you kind of wake up and think, fuck, do I want this life? and I have to make a decision right now whether, is there another way out?
How old were you when you realised that?
So I was 15 when I went into rehab, which I always say to people is the birth of me. It's the real,
when the real Josh came out.
That was the inflection point of like, if I don't stop this, I'm heading into like, I will kill myself kind of thing, and I would have, because that's where I didn't see any way out. And then I fucked around for 3 years, basically. And that saying of fuck around and find out? Like, I found out. And by 19, I tried for 3 years, from the age of 15 to 19, I tried everything in my power to basically go against everything to try and still be the idiot that I could, but doing it my way. And listen, I'm very, very fortunate, and this is a critical part of my story, which is I walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, which for a 15-year-old kid is a bit strange. You don't really, if you don't know about that world, it's a strange world, and it can feel a bit cult-like, but actually it's probably I believe it's one of the greatest gifts known to the human race, because everyone has some form of addiction. And I believe that doing the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is the only way that I've been able to stay clean, and the only way that I've been able to live a bridge to normal living. And for 3 years I tried to go down other routes, because I didn't want to go down that route. And actually, just by sitting in a circle with a group of addicts and alcoholics and talking about your story, I've got a saying that strangers saved my life. I walked into a room at 15 years old of randomers who weren't getting paid, but just had a similar problem to me. They were addicts, and all they want to do is help you. And they would come over and they'd give you a hug and they'd take your number, and then they would call you. And that's weird, and they would message you and they would say, like, are you all right? Do you need any help? I'm not used to that. And as English people, we're definitely not used to that. But, what being sober and what recovery has showed me is that there is a world out there where it doesn't matter where I am in the world, someone somewhere is there to help me. So there's a meeting anywhere in the world. I can be in... I can be anywhere. I can be in Australia, I can be in LA, I can be in Spain. There are meetings there, and I can sit with other like-minded people who have got addiction issues. And addiction is a very big part of my journey. I mean, I am an addict through and through. I've got an addictive a really bad addictive personality that if I use it in the wrong way, it can take over my life and my mind and just consume me. And what I've learned is that just by doing these 12 steps and going to meetings, etc., I can basically live a normal life. And it's really, really difficult to explain if you're not an addict, but as someone that is an addict, from the second that you wake up to the second that you go to sleep, you're thinking about how can I feel this way? And today I use business and the gym and healthy eating and speaking about my life as an addiction, a healthy addiction.
You talk about the healthy addictions. We were walking into this room and you were talking about you can't wait to wake up every day and see your daughter. You've also poured your addiction into a positive thing, which is your business. Yeah. You said that you are a DJ. Am I understanding this correctly? That you can either channel your addiction in positive ways or negative ways. Yeah. And if you choose to go down almost like the quick fix way, which is the alcohol, the drugs, and those sorts of things, or like the really fulfilling things, which is your obsessive personality and your addictive personality is no different. You're the same person. Mm-hmm. You're just channeling it in different ways. Yeah,
and you know what? You're spot on. My first positive addiction in life was music. I'm obsessed. Music and art, like I'm obsessed. And also anything different. I've always been like a bit of a shepherd in the sense of like, I've never been like a sheep in the sense of I'm always looking for the new thing.
Yeah. So you're wearing Whoop, so you're someone who
there you go.
You love the data. You're
100%. I'm a sucker for anything new. And you know, an Instagram ad might get me any moment. But you know, it's funny. One of my biggest fears in life, and our lives are revolve around fears. Okay, doesn't matter what it is: health, financial insecurities. You know, it could be anything. It could be anything. But it's the thing that's stopping us from being the greatest version of ourselves. Fear. You know, I don't want to leave my job because I'm scared, you know, to start something great because I'm scared that I'm going to be a failure. And, you know, actually it'd be the greatest thing that's ever happened to you. And, you know, we talk about Simon Squibb and, you know, the message that he, you know, speaks about. And, you know, as someone that's been there and done that, it's the hardest thing ever, but it's also the greatest thing ever. And it's a blocker. And I think that fear is something that is really, really, it's ingrained it's ingrained in us. And you know, my biggest fear was I looked around at everyone at school and everyone had something. You know, it could have been going and working for their parents, or it could have been a skill. They were really, really clever. At this point in life, creativity wasn't a thing. You know, it was like 20 years ago, it was like, what can creativity bring to your life? You've got to go to uni. You need to do this. You need to do that. This is where the schooling system is so bad, and really not geared for people like myself who have got addictive personalities and have got ADHD and need to learn how to channel it into greatness, because our minds are great and we can think differently to a lot of other people. But my biggest fear, which ended up turning into my biggest kind of, you know, my greatest strength, was that I couldn't be what all the other people that I looked at school could be. So one of the decisions that I had to make early on leaving school was that I wouldn't enjoy working at a desk. At the time, I couldn't do it. I knew that I would just end up being unhappy. So I said to myself, I'm only going to concentrate on things that I love. And I absolutely love music. So I went and studied art. I went and, you know, I got expelled from school actually, but luckily I got into an art college and started to do a degree in sculpture. Okay. So I really, really enjoyed that, but I didn't finish it off because I'd started DJing. And by the time I was sort of like 18 years old, I was DJing in so many incredible clubs. And the thing that I loved about DJing is I was doing what I absolutely loved. And there's something about commanding a crowd. And, you know, one of the things, I'm a big Drake fan, and there's a Drake lyric that I'm obsessed with. And the lyric is, while all my friends are out partying, I make all the music that they party to.
Wow.
And remember, I was sober at this point. At 18, and I was DJing at clubs, and I didn't want to be at the other end. I wanted to be the DJ that was DJing to all my friends. So I basically found this real incredible niche where all my friends were at uni, and I was literally just DJing all around the country at some of the biggest clubs. I mean, some weeks I was DJing to like 150 to 200,000 people.
What?
I mean, it was just mental.
How? Like a festival?
All across the country.
Oh, you mean across
yes, I was DJing
week.
like, you know, 5,000 people, 3,000 people.
Yeah.
And I was just DJing everywhere. And, you know, I was working for some massive, massive venues. And, you know, some nights I'd be DJing to like 15,000 people for, you know, at a festival or a massive uni venue. And, you know, I had some of the greatest times of my life. I mean, I was sleeping in my car, but it didn't matter.
You loved it.
Because I loved it. And that's what I learned very early on and this is what I say to a lot of people with ADHD, stop worrying about what everyone else is doing. What do you love?
Yeah.
Because as someone with ADHD, I would sit in an English and a maths class and I just couldn't concentrate. I'd just be drawing and graffitiing because I was obsessed with art and graffiti. But put me in like a music or an art class, I'm wired in. And that's where people with ADHD, and this is where the Cano Water story is so important, because I learned very early on, if I'm doing what I absolutely love, I'm a force to be reckoned with. No one is going to be as ambitious as me. You know, I'm locked in. So, you know, that was a very, very big learning curve for me, and that's where everything started to come together for me. You know, when I was 19, I had a bit of a relapse. It was my eye-opening year of my second birth. It was the year where, you know, I hit rock bottom. Really? I realized, yeah, I'd you know, I had so much going for me. I started a business. It was an events company, doing really, really well in the country, with, you know, some of the biggest names in UK music. And overnight, the business just died because of a lot of like restrictions. And cut long story short, I had so much, and this happened a few times to me in my life, where everything's going great and then everything just falls off of a cliff. And you know, at that point, you've got to make a decision. Do I give up, or do I just go again and go harder? And, you know, this was at a time where, you know, my brother was ill. My brother got diagnosed with cancer, as I mentioned. I had lost my business. I had had severe heartbreak. And I basically just kind of, what's the word? I mean, I caved in, really. And I basically just, I didn't know what to do. I relapsed, ended up back in rehab in a place that I never thought I'd ever end up in again. And it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. You know, that was nearly 16 years ago now. And, you know, I haven't touched a drink or a drug since. But that was such a crucial moment for me, where I was like, okay, you know, nothing can fucking break me.
Yeah.
You know, like
that's a real resilience right now.
And listen, I get scared saying that, because you never know what's in store for you. But, you know, by the time I was 19 years old, I had really gone through so fucking much. You know, I was so broken that I realised that it was actually a bit of a skill to, like, it was kind of like, you know, like in a movie, like looking up to like any higher power that was there, saying like, bring it on, like I'm ready. And, you know, that was at 19. And I was DJing more, and I didn't really know what my purpose was. And then obviously when I was 21 in 2014, I went away with my two mates. And, you know, the other two really like were also quite similar to me, very lost.
They have ADHD as well?
You know, what one is diagnosed, the other one not diagnosed, but definitely ADHD characteristics. And listen, my belief is that everyone's on some kind of spectrum. Everyone's got some kind of autistic or ADHD traits. And I, you know, I was having a conversation about this recently. I think that the rise of ADHD has been through the rise of social media and phones and screen time. I genuinely believe that. I've noticed over the years, and remember, I've had ADHD. Well, I believe I've had ADHD my whole life, but I've known about it. So, you know, I've had over 20 years to learn about ADHD in a time where 15 years of that, no one even really knew what it. They knew what it was, but no one was really talking about it. And
won't talk about the positive sides of it.
Exactly.
Most importantly,
exactly. And I think that, you know, I've been able to learn how to navigate it, and it's really, really, really tough. You know, it's a really tough sort of process. It's funny because I'm colourblind. I'll give you an example. I'm colourblind.
Oh, yeah.
And it's actually quite similar. Like, I've realised what colours things are based on the wrong colours.
Yeah, I got
It's
you.
like
That's,
backwards.
yeah.
And I think that, you know, with the three of us boys, you know, I notice in all entrepreneurs, and I'm saying this about the other two as well, like you've actually got to have these kinds of characteristics to be an entrepreneur. Because I don't think everyone can. I think everyone can try, but whether everyone's going to be a successful entrepreneur, you know, listen, there's anomalies out there. There are people that hit the jackpot straight away. You know, I believe that I'm going to have many failures in my life, okay? And I've accepted that. And I've accepted that there's going to be a lot of hardships along the way. And I think you do have to as an entrepreneur. So when we went to Thailand, we didn't go there thinking about becoming entrepreneurs. You know, that journey came later. You know, from the failure of my events company, I definitely knew that I loved doing that. And I realised, actually, I don't want to work for anyone else. I want to do things for myself. At that point, I didn't really know what purpose was. I think my only purpose really was the music and the art and the culture. Went to Thailand, saw how bad the plastic problem was. I think that the ADHD and addiction took major part in it, because I think that if you had turned around to most people and said, oh, you know, most people would just forget about what they saw. You know, if you were a family and you went to Thailand and you saw it, you might bring it up in family dinners for the rest of your life. Oh, when we saw the plastic pollution. But we were just so obsessed with trying to make a difference, and that's where the ADHD comes into play. It's that hyper focus of how, why, you know, and then the addictiveness of, like, you know, it's like, how can we make a difference? And then you see that cans are the most recyclable material on the planet, and that 75% of all aluminium ever produced since the 1800s is just still in circulation.
Wow.
And every can can become another can, and a can from 100 years ago could be the can that you're drinking. Well, the can that you're drinking from today would have been a can from 100 years ago. So we were just like, how's this never happened? And, you know, we touched on the purpose before profit. You know, if we wanted to make profit before purpose, we would not be putting water in a can.
Yeah.
It'd be the worst fucking business decision ever. We were naive, okay, about that, definitely. Because, as we said, you know, cans are more expensive, but we had so much hope, so much belief, so much naivety that this is going to work, and so much like, fuck what everyone says. We are, you know, everyone told us it wouldn't work, and we just sort of shunned off the naysayers and were like, no, we're doing it. So, you know, the reason why the ADHD and addiction is so important to talk about in my story, and why I always say to anyone that I do a podcast with, that it is so important, because if I just started talking about Cano Water and where we're at today, you wouldn't actually, it would just sound like every other story of like, oh yeah, we've got a business and it's great, and it was actually like, that's not how we got here, and that's actually not fair to talk about that, because it's still horrendously tough today. And I believe, and I say this in most of my podcasts, I'm the voice for people that maybe for people that haven't got belief in themselves, and that they may be the people that other people also don't have belief in, because I was that individual. You know, I'm the voice for the people that aren't the entrepreneurs. You know, I always say that I'm the accidental entrepreneur. I was never meant to be here. I should be buried 6 feet under, really. And there's so many variables that have happened in my life where that would have been the case. So, you know, I think for me, the inception of Cano Water and the reason Cano Water exists today, and the one thing that the three of us do have, is we've all had very tough childhoods, through family, through death, you know, through real tough pain. And that's how, do you know what's funny? That's how we came together. That's how many friendships come together.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of my friendships that I've got today are with people that have gone through shit, and we've kind of helped each other. We're just all fucked up people who basically come together to really help each other. And that's something that I don't think there's enough of. And I think that, honestly, that's where some of the greatest bonds and the greatest businesses of all time come out of. They come out of experience and hardships and learnings. Because you have to learn from a lot of mistakes and a lot of problems. So, that really was where the inception and the idea of Cano Water sort of came from. But it is important to talk about the backstory.
With the backstory, even though you were going through all of those, really troubled times as a teenager, were you still ambitious that you could achieve something great in the world, or did you kind of feel like you didn't fit in and that you were an imposter in the world?
I still feel like an imposter every day.
Do you?
Every day. I don't think that will ever change. And the greatest thing that you can ever do for yourself is push yourself in the most uncomfortable positions ever. Like, go out of... I never could do a podcast, and I never could speak in front of people. Okay? I went out of my comfort zone and pushed myself out of my comfort zone in order to do that. I believe that is so important. So the imposter syndrome thing is really, really, really rife for me. And I hate that saying, because actually, like, it's so ingrained in me. But what I've become really good at is masking it. So everyone will say to me, like, you don't look like you've got imposter syndrome. And yeah, that's because I'm faking it to make it every single day. Like, it's that's a skill. Purpose for me is a really, really important part of my story.
Did you discover that for the first time when you were in Thailand?
I discovered that twice in my life. I've got two purposes in my life. Well, actually, I've got one purpose which goes into different pockets. My purpose is to do good. That's it. And it sounds a bit cliche because everyone says that, but I know exactly where that is. I spend my life helping people with ADHD and addiction. Okay? I will go out of my way to help anyone. I don't care who it is. I will help them. Okay, I'll point them in the right direction. I'll spend time with them. And entrepreneurs, I struggle with the word entrepreneur because I don't know whether I'm an entrepreneur, in all honesty. I've started a business, great. I haven't sold a business. I've still got a risky business.
You started two businesses.
Two businesses. I mean, listen.
You're serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, serial entrepreneur. I don't even know what entrepreneur means, to be honest with you. But I've got experiences, and I've conquered certain parts of journeys. It's like Takeshi's Castle. Did you ever watch Takeshi's Castle? Yeah. Do you remember that bit where, like, they're trying to run through the doors and they're these geezers that are just trying to stop them run through the doors? That's what I feel like. So I've got through doors, and I can definitely help people, in each journey. But I believe that the ADHD and addiction, the entrepreneurial sort of helping people grow in their early side of the journey and expand, and also, like, from a sustainability perspective, what I do know is that, after having a daughter and feeling that, immense love and that immense, like, what's my purpose in life? My purpose in life is just to always do better. Always do better. And, our slogan on I Can is don't bottle it. And it started as not putting water into plastic bottles, obviously. But the real thing is that it's just fucking doing it, and it's not being afraid to doing it. And that's where the imposter syndrome comes from, because I could just, I couldn't financially, but I could just sit on my arse and just do nothing for the rest of my life, or be stable like the majority of people, and just sort of earn a standard living. And but forget that. there's something in me that yearns, like, forget the money. We need money to live, but I yearn to just do better. Every single thing that I think about is how can I add value to do better for the planet.
So a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start out, they are trying to solve a problem, but you're actually saying, I'm trying to solve a problem, but that is doing good.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, I've got like a piece of technology that I feel like I'm missing here, and I can make money doing that.
Yeah.
It's, well, does that actually give positive output to the world?
100%. And I think that the thing that I hate the word authenticity, because everyone's fucking authentic these days. You know, everyone says that they're authentic. But I tell you what, I can pinpoint why I want to do better. And it's because of my experience. I want to help people with ADHD and addiction because I have ADHD and addiction. And I've gone from the pits of hell to the person I am today. That's basically got everything in my life that I never dreamed of, that I never even thought that I could have, you know, through channeling my mind and creating this mind map and path out of the pits of hell to, you know, to a place of being happy and feeling great. I mean, the old me didn't look like me. If you saw pictures of me 12 years ago, you'd be like, what, who is that? It's crazy. You know, I went from being the most unhealthy person on the planet, eating 4 McDonald's a day, fizzy drinks, 10 Red Bulls every single day, staying up until 4 o'clock in the morning DJing, to, you know, being, you know, a very well-rounded, healthy individual who, you know, who doesn't do any of those things anymore. And it's about it. You can't also do that yourself. You need help. You need mentors. You need people around you who can guide you. So that's my purpose and authenticity there. And the second part was Cano Water. You know, Cano Water gave me the lens, and it actually wasn't on the beach in Thailand. That was just a sporadic you know, idea that most people thought was stupid. It was really when we started to see that how bad the planet actually, like how bad the world is, how the big corporates don't give a shit about the planet. That's when my purpose came a lot more in, when I started to go for meetings with charities who said that they cared about sustainability, and then basically said afterwards that they can't commit because they've got a big sponsor, and their sponsor turned out to be Coca-Cola or Pepsi.
You're joking me.
You know, yeah. And I saw very, very quickly how we were, you know, companies were paying for Cano Water, like paying businesses for to not work with Cano Water.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that work?
It works because they've got immense power, and people make so much money
they've got
from
so
these
much
brands.
money, they can say,
so much money.
We will pay you not to have that on your shelf.
So much power.
What?
It's crazy. It's like it's like a cartel. And remember, like, these people own the drinks industry.
But that's when you know you're doing something right.
100%. But it's also really difficult. And as I said to you before, like, wherever Cano Water ends up, the thing that I'm most happy about is that we have woken up the world. We've done so much in our time where we've essentially, we've created a global category where people load their, there's hundreds of millions of cans of water out there now being sold. There's brands that are looking at their sustainability credentials being like, we've got to be transparent because the consumer's looking in. We started that in the world of beverage. We coined that, and I'm very proud of that because we were just 3 kids, really.
21-year-olds, yeah.
We didn't really even know what we were doing, and I never forget, within the space of 6 weeks, I had someone from Coke and Pepsi come to me and be like, "You're on every single one of our presentations. Like, you are
as a challenger."
Yeah, it's like these guys, they're coming in, and
wow,
that's scary, but exciting. So, you know, I'm as someone that cares about, you know, planet before profit, it's really important that Cano succeeds, but also that, you know, that we've made that difference.
It's honestly amazing what you've done in the face of the adversity, not just from your childhood, the addiction, the ADHD, but also, like you say, with these big companies that want to literally get rid of you, to still be here today. How many cans do you sell a year? Do you know?
So we've sold nearly 70 million cans in total.
Wow.
And we will sell probably around 12 to 13 million cans in a year.
So you said when you first started a business or had the idea, people told you that was a stupid idea, it's never going to work. What were those initial conversations like for you and your friends? I've got a lot of questions here. I've got a very curious mind. One of them is, how the fuck do you source water?
Yeah.
Like sourcing materials like textiles and stuff. How do you go out there and like source water?
Listen, naivety is the greatest gift for any entrepreneur. It really is. And you know, we are your typical entrepreneurs of like not taking no for an answer. And I believe that if you are a very good salesperson, you do not need to go to university unless you're gonna, you know, unless you need a degree. Okay, I genuinely believe this. Like, I think that if you know how to sell, skip uni. You don't need it, because you yourself are your greatest asset. And I think that I didn't know how to sell before going into Cano Water. You know, one of my business partner, Ariel, did, and he was great, and I learned a lot from him. But, you know, from the age of 13, though, I was, you know, working in a deli, and then I worked for a hair wax company, and I was selling hair wax to barbers, and I was cold calling, and I was pretty shit at it, to be honest with you. I had a little bit of baseline, but like and a little bit of experience, but I was really, really bad. And by the time I got to Cano, I'll be honest with you, like I didn't really know how important being like your own salesperson was, especially for your own brand. But in those first few years, so actually let's go back to the sourcing. You just got to call as many people as possible. And let me just say this.
Who do you call?
You
like
just
Springs?
call,
And
you just call Springs. You call co-packers, the people that fill cans.
Okay.
You call can manufacturers, and they will point you into the direction of someone. And it's like a ladder, literally. It's like you start here, then you go here, you go here. And that's what I've learned, is that someone somewhere is going to know something.
Yeah.
Okay. And let me just say this, no one knew how to put water in a can. Okay, it's really not easy. It's so difficult to do, and it was more difficult then because no one had done it. We had probably spent the good part of a few months really trying to find the right partner, and someone introduced us to someone in Austria. And they basically turned around and said, you know what, we'll do it, because we've actually, weirdly enough, tried it before, and it's really hard to do, but we've got the capability to do it. And they had the tooling and the kit, and we tried it. And listen, it worked. But the hardest thing is for any entrepreneur is, especially going into what we do, is the storage space. It's the minimum order quantities. It's a heavy, you know, it's a very, very heavy cost.
So did you need money to initially go to them and say, I want you to fill X number of cans of water?
So we had to get investment. It was the only way. Like, we didn't have any family money to put into this, like, quantity. And I was sort of bankrolling it with DJ money, which like a few grand here and there. Like, we didn't really have anything. But the truth is that, you know, we needed at least 100 grand to launch the business. So what we did is we kind of did it backwards. We found the capabilities to do it. This place in Austria, they could do it. We created a fake brand called Cano Water, which was just a brochure that looked phenomenal, but we didn't have a product.
Fake it till you make it.
Literally fake it is like my motto. And then we created a fake prototype, basically. They didn't have water in, because we we had to order a minimum of 150,000 cans of each still and sparkling.
Wow.
So we couldn't do that. So what we did is we created this fake brand with a fake prototype. We wrapped the can and turn up to meetings with this fake can of water. And we basically got an order from Selfridges and London Fashion Week, with that fake, so the crazy thing about Selfridges is that they were looking at removing all of their plastic, which is just crazy, the timing of it all. Like, they were the first retailer in the world to do it, and we had reached out to them in that time period. And that was really great. And at that point we went to a couple of investors and basically just said, what can we do, are you interested? And they were, and they would put the initial investment into the business, and that's kind of how we launched it. But it's kind of like there's no A, B, C, D. It's kind of like C, B, A, D,
But to your brain, that probably makes sense as well, doesn't it?
The way that my brain works is that's how my brain works.
Yeah.
It's so weird. People will be like, but that makes no sense, Josh. And I'll be like, well, why? What? Tell me how that doesn't make sense. And I think that is what's so great about neurodivergent brains is hiring someone with ADHD or autism could be one of the greatest things ever for your business, because they could be the thing that is, that they could be the missing link.
Yeah, we don't speak about this often enough. And I work in an industry where everyone has been to university, probably bar me.
Yeah.
I still got there as well. Going back to your point, I still got to exactly the same position because you didn't need a degree to do the job that I do.
Yeah, of course.
But most people did. But I went sort of down a back way. I got some experience, all these different things, made connections, which is going back to the selling part. That is your greatest skill, really. I forgot where I was going with this.
I always do that.
Because I also think that it's not been diagnosed, but I think my brain works completely differently to like my girlfriends, my friends. But that was a question I was going to ask. If you're speaking to somebody now who has got ADHD and they've thought about starting a business before, but they're scared to, what would your advice actually be to that person? Let's picture my brother, for example. He has got the capability, for sure, of starting his own business. He's got the drive. He's got the obsessive personality in the same way. But like, what does he need to do? What are the steps that he needs to take? So what does he need to overcome things like the imposter syndrome and just sort of like bash down that door?
So first of all, he needs to decide what he loves doing and what's his passions and what are the things that if he's going to do it for 10 years, that he's going to love forever, So I still DJ, loads, out of choice, I just love it. It's something that I completely, really enjoy doing. And then Cano as well, it's a passion project. I think that's the first thing. What do you love doing? And how can you do something great within that world? And how can you offer something a bit different? What problem is it solving? Because solving a problem is something as well that's going to keep him like ambitious, and it's going to keep him, wanting to prove a point and do more. Because as people with ADHD, and autism, like we're always trying to prove people wrong. The second thing would be don't bottle it, which is like it's easier said than done, but it's as easy as that. You've got to wake up, and you've basically just got to say, fuck it. I am going to, like, whatever it takes, sell your car. I'm going to, don't cancel a few subscriptions. You might have to take 10 steps back to go 10 steps forward. Get comfortable with that. Be a bit of a hermit and ask for as much help as possible. Go out and speak to people and just say, this is what I love doing. There's so many amazing networking events, this is what I love doing. I've got ADHD. I'm petrified of this. Tell me, what can I do? What do you think that I can add value? How can I add value to the world? And then start planning. And it's just not easy. And you know what? For anyone, any sane person would just think, I can't do that. I've got a family. How can I? But the truth is that mentality is stopping you. And you know what? There's a phrase, I've loved this forever. It's Jordan Belfort, The Wolf of Wall Street. I can't remember exactly what it is, but the thing that's stopping you from being the best version of yourself is the bullshit excuse that you're telling yourself. It really is true. It's like we all make excuses of why we can't do that. I do it. We all do it. Oh yeah, but. It's like, no.
Just do it.
Just do it. Go and do it. Like, who's to say that I can't be like, it's just a stupid example. Like, who's to say that I can't, and I've never done a high rocks in my life. I don't know, but who's to say that I can't be the high rocks world champion next year? Who's saying it? Like, why can't I be? If I try hard enough, I can try. I'll probably lose every single year. But I know and I think that this is where going out of your comfort zone and having that, you look at boxers and they're so confident. And deep down, they probably, a lot of them know that they're going to lose, but they've been told, like, never ever go off piste. Always have that mentality of like, you're going to win, you're going to win, you're going to win. And anyone that saw that Conor Benn, Eubank fight, you can see that Conor Benn genuinely believed, that he was going to, and he nearly, it was one of the greatest fights that I've seen in a long time. And the sheer determination and the sheer like want. And I think that's what's so important when it comes to, being the best version of yourself. And by the way, I'm not just talking about being an entrepreneur here. I'm talking about anything.
Yeah, wherever
I'm
you
talking about anything.
Life. Yeah,
I'm talking about even like going to the gym. I'm talking about any journey. I believe that you can put these steps into play. But you have to start somewhere. Otherwise, every day you are just, life goes so quick.
Yeah.
Every day it's just another day. And that's a big fear of mine. The clock's ticking. I don't care if, I fail. It's painful. But my biggest fear is not trying. That's my biggest fear. If I fail, I fail. I have to get up again.
Don't have any regrets.
No regrets. No, and I never do. If I could go back in time with everything that I've told you, there's probably one or two things that I would change. And most people be like, what, you wouldn't choose that you weren't an alcoholic, and you wouldn't choose that, that you could change this and change that. I mean, I wouldn't be me without those things.
You might not have been able to build Cano because you might not have been as resilient.
Yeah.
You said that you think that everything in life can throw at you has happened already. So to have that experience at such a young age prepares you so much more for when you are going into the big worlds, the real world.
100%. So, it's really, really important that I, one, don't forget where I've come from, my hardships, and also that, as I said, like, I wouldn't be here without them, and I should be not only proud of myself, but I should be, what was I going to say? I should be grateful for those, for those moments in my life.
That's some journey to come to that conclusion, despite, because at that time you must have been feeling like, why does this happen to me?
It's exactly how I felt. And I hated, do you know what? I hated myself. It's so funny, like growing up, if anyone that knew me, I had to be around 10, 15 people at any given moment. Like, I had to be around people. I was always the person that like had so many friends at my house, and I was always surrounding myself with people. I couldn't be alone. So like today, I could be alone, and I could be happy in my own skin. And I think that all of that comes from being sort of, as I said, like being proud and believing in myself. I think there's a lot of people walking around, and we could be outside, sitting outside at a Starbucks, and hundreds, thousands of people could be walking past. And you know the saddest thing? The majority of them will be very lonely people who are living a life that we don't even know that they're living it. And I think that is something that really, really upsets me, and is something that I want to do a lot more about, because I don't think we live in I think we live in a better open society, but I don't think we live in I think it needs to be a lot more normalized, that when people, I'll give you an example, like when men sit around the dinner table, that they're not just talking about football and money and work, that they're actually talking about, how are you?
Yeah.
How is everything going on? You know, I lost a friend in COVID who took his own life. I've known many people in my life who have taken their own life, actually. And if I could go back and speak to those people, you know, and then nine times out of 10, you can't stop a lot of these things, you know. Yeah, a lot of the people actually were people that, when you look back at it, you didn't know that they were suffering.
We don't talk about it.
No.
Even, I'm a Spurs fan, so I've got a season ticket. I couldn't actually tell you the people that I sit next to. We're all there, just like we turn up, we do 90 minutes of football, we have a few beers before and after, but we don't talk about anything else. We talk about the football, and but still we have those moments together. People that I'd never met before, I now sit with. Did
you see that campaign ages ago?
That was
you
was
know,
powerful.
the guy next. Do you know what I mean? And that is a perfect example, and that's where I really, really believe that we need to be more open and encourage people to get to a place where you can talk about how, you know, with a stranger. Because I said to you before, strangers saved my life. I sit down, I still go to meetings every week. I sit down with people that I've never met in my life, and I talk to them about everything that, you know, that's going on in my life at the moment. You know, I'm going through something at the moment that, you know, I haven't spoken about with anyone outside of like in the open. But, you know, a very close family member of mine has been in rehab for the past 13 weeks, you know, coming out of an addiction. And, you know, it's not about going around and telling everyone, you know, but it's really, really important for me that I speak to people about it, because I'm suffering. And what I've learned is that not only am I helping others, because that most people turn around and say, oh, well, actually, I've felt a certain way, and they open up back to me, but it fucking helps me.
Yeah. I found this for the first time in COVID. I was struggling, so was my housemate, actually, but we were both independently struggling. And I was then telling people on the phone at my work, I was like, oh, I'm just having a really bad week.
And then they opened up back to you.
And then, so I went then into like problem solver modes.
Yeah.
So I forget about my problems. I'm now trying to help
exactly.
him. And I was like, that is very powerful, because I didn't expect that being vulnerable, but it came to a point of like frustration. I was like, we're locked indoors. Like, we're all social beings. Like, it's really getting to me right now.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, mate, I'm feeling the same. Like, you know, he lived in a really small flat. And he's like, I just want to go out.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like really lonely. And then I was like, okay, well, like, why don't we meet up in a park, for example?
100%.
We've got the solution. We're now interacting. And
it's so funny that you say this, because I was literally listening to a podcast the other day about this professor who was literally saying that the mental health epidemic is just huge, but one of the keys to it is just sharing. And like I'm very fortunate, because I've had my meetings and Alcoholics Anonymous where I've experienced that firsthand. But outside of that world, it doesn't happen. Where do normal people go and share their issues and talk to without spending £100 on a therapy session every week that no one can really afford unless you've got that kind of money?
When actually you can do therapy sessions for free by chatting to your mates.
There you go. And that is, you know, massively important. So, you know, I think that's where my real purpose and authenticity comes into play, is that you know, it really is about what my purpose in life is, giving back.
Do you think that that's going to be a business idea of yours at some point?
Yeah.
You creating like a network or a safe space for people to do this?
It's already in the making.
Is it?
Yeah, it's already in the making.
What does your notes look like for your business ideas?
Do you know what? It's crazy. Crazy. I come up with so many great things. But no, you know, there's another thing. There's another ADHD trait, is the starting something and not finishing it. So, you know, Cano Water is a chapter at the moment, and I'm concentrating on that, and I've got to be careful because can't take my eye off the ball.
Got you.
So I've learned through my early days of my life of like starting something and not finishing it, and that's something that I'm very, very aware of. You know, I've got to check myself every single day for things like that, whether it be you know, relationships, whether it be work, anything. I get bored very, very, very easily. And I'm so much better now. You know, I've being able to like go out of your skin and look inwardly at yourself is one of the greatest skills and strengths that I've managed to, you know, to learn.
Do you practice meditation?
I've done a lot of meditation in my life, and I think it's fantastic, and I need to do more. But knowing what your strengths, but most importantly your weaknesses are really important. We've you know, we all think that we're the greatest thing. You know, in ourselves, we all think that we've got the greatest family, and that, you know, our kids are the greatest things, and
the best looking.
Like the best looking. You know, like we all are, you know, as creatures, we all think that we are the most important thing in the world, and actually sometimes we need to just go outside and look in and be like, and look at and give ourselves a bit of a dose of reality. And I do that every single day.
Do you?
I'm not perfect.
How do you do that? Do you do it formally, or do you just it's just a mental reminder?
I make a lot of mistakes. And I think this is part of the 12 steps that I was talking about. If Alcoholics Anonymous, and anyone that's in it will understand, it's a bit like Buddhism, really. But like, I'm able to see my part in things, and I don't get me wrong. As I said, I'm not perfect. But what I'm able to do is, I'm able to come out of a situation and look in at it and be like, okay, this is my fault, and then go and, whether it be making amends or apologise for, you know, or even make things right. You know, I'm a normal human being. We're all normal human beings.
People forget this, don't they?
And we also can't punish ourselves for, you know, for making mistakes or fucking up. You know, I've done some really stupid things in my life, and I'm, you know, I spend my life now righting my wrongs, and I believe that, you know, I've made my family proud. I mean, my family used to be scared of the person I was and where I was heading, and now I'm like, you know, my parents just, none of us understand how I've gone from there. One minute I'm in court, about to go to prison at 17, 18 years old, and the next minute you know, I've got a whole business and I've got a family.
Forbes 30 under
30. Forbes 30 under 30. So, and by the way, only I did that. So it's about training your mind, and you know, that's a business. You know, that's a business idea. You know, just like helping others create a mental path, you know, and it could be even a volunteering idea, who knows. But it's the world is a scary place, and it ain't getting easier, it's getting harder. And I think that the more you understand that, and the more you come to terms with that, and the more you accept that failing will be probably the greatest thing that ever happens to you, and you listen to that song, I get knocked down, but I get up again. You know, you could be the best version of yourself, but the only way that you're going to become the best version of yourself is if you come out of your comfort zone, as we've said.
Yeah, 100%. And I think about this every day at the moment, where I'm like, I used to be a person that was late to a lot of things. I would forget to reply to messages. And this was a mental switch recently where I said, it's actually my best friend, to be honest with you, like, we're having open conversations, and he was like, mate, like, I'll message you about something and you reply like 5 days later.
This is so common. This is so common.
So I've turned around and I said to myself, and he picked up on it the other day, and just do it now. Like, if a message comes through, I was scared about like getting into this cycle of like, if I start replying, then I'm going to get into this like big conversation.
And everyone has different expectations. And it's like it's the biggest. I think it's the biggest. It's the biggest issue when it comes to relationships, and I'm talking about friendships, sexual relations with, girlfriends, boyfriends, whatever it is. And everyone's got different expectations. The way that you see the world is different to how someone else sees the world. And accepting that is key. There's a lot of stubborn people out there, and I'm stubborn at times, but, it's funny. I will watch a movie that will be I think is the best movie ever, and someone will turn around and say, "Oh, I hate it," and it will kill me.
Really?
And I'll listen to a song that I love, and someone will be like, "Oh, I really don't like this," and I'll be like, "Oh, like I really." But everyone's different.
Yeah.
It's like the colourblind thing. Like I see colours differently to everyone else. You probably see yellow different to how I see yellow, and it's just accepting that actually that we're all different, and we're all great in our own different great ways. Something I've learned, with my family members, my younger brother, I always wanted him to be like me, and he's nothing like me. He's the complete opposite. And actually, like, I love him more than anything in the world. And he, I love how different he is to me, actually. And I've learned about that. I think, as parents as well, people can spend so much time trying to mould people into other things and what they want them to be. But actually, they're just, I think it has an adverse effect, and actually we all just want to, we all just will go down our own paths. And as a parent, I just want to guide my daughter and my kids down, a path that, and if they go down the same path as me, they go down the same path.
How would you feel about that?
It would kill me. But I don't think they will have any better person to help them guide them through it personally. And I'm beyond grateful that I am who I am now, rather than who I would have been as their parent.
How has fatherhood changed how you are?
Listen, it's not easy. The hardest thing is growing a business and not being there a lot of the time.
How old's your daughter?
She's about to be a year next week. It's just emotional. It's like, it's a feeling that I've never felt ever. And so many emotions around, like, am I a good dad? Does she love me? How can I be better? Is she going to resent me? Is like, I was such a dickhead as a kid to my parents that, like, I just want to make sure that I give her everything that, my dad is just he's just my greatest inspiration.
Shout out to your dad.
And shouts to my dad, and he's always said, like, I'm the richest man alive, and not because he's got the money, because he doesn't, but because he's got family, and he's one of these people that have gone through so much in life, but he's always got a smile on his face.
Yeah.
And I've always respected that, and I've learned a lot from that. It's probably one of the reasons I've been so resilient. Like, when my brother had cancer, he just dealt with it. And I watched him, and I was like, how the fuck are you not crumbling? So, yeah, like, being a father has been really hard and mentally challenging. But really, it's been a year of, like, it's been such a different experience, and one that I'm really nervous for, but also so excited for.
That's well, you spoke earlier on about the fear, and was that a fear of yours, and is it still a fear of yours now as well? Like, what sort of dad am I going to be? Or
Yeah.
like, was the fear before having a child, like, do I want to be a dad? Did you always want to be a dad?
Yeah, I did. I did. And I think that my fear was around me not being a good dad. One, as much as I love my parents, my family is very, very, very dysfunctional. So
Aren't they all?
Yeah, they are all. But abnormally dysfunctional. And, you know, I sat with a therapist once and I sort of said, you know, I really don't want my kids to have the same upbringing as me. Because my parents, you know, my mum was adopted, my dad lost his dad at a very young age, and my parents just didn't really know how to be parents, even though like they're good people. they just didn't really understand boundaries and things like that. And you know, one of the therapists, he said something to me that I'll never ever forget. He said, "What started with you will end with you." And I definitely think that my parents weren't strict. I could just get away with fucking anything. And I think that, you know, I've learned a lot from that. And I definitely, you know, I never understood, actually. I do understand because it's addiction, but, you know, I had friends whose parents were terrible alcoholics, and they would always be like, I could never be like that. And then like they become alcoholics. And, you know, I get it now because I understand the disease of addiction, but it's so important that I learn from my family's mistakes. And there's a period in a child's life, really, from, you know, I learned a lot of this in psychology and through a lot of like, there's a critical period of when a kid is like 3 to 5 years old where they really, they need to learn boundaries.
Okay.
And like, I clearly didn't. So I've got a lot of fear around it, but like what will be will be. Like you can't become obsessed with these things as well. You end up becoming neurotic yourself, and then you end up becoming a lunatic parent. So I am just going with the flow. I'm taking every single day as it comes, and I have to accept that, you know, I am the best version of me today, and I have to hope that, you know, my kids see that.
I mean, this wasn't actually the conversation I was expecting today, to be honest with you. Like, usually it's about the business and building the business and the insights, but this has been incredibly powerful. And like, we need more people like you who are open.
Thank you.
Because all you see on LinkedIn or on Instagram and things like that are these very like stoic
everyone's winning.
Everyone's winning, exactly.
And like the truth is that, you know, 99% of them aren't. It's the truth. It's that Insta versus reality.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's faking it to make it. It's like what's on top of the iceberg versus what's underneath the iceberg. And actually, you know what? I've just learned, like, if I'm going to be the voice for the failures and for the fuck ups, then so be it. And I'm very, very happy to be that voice, because, you know, I'm living it. You know, I'm living, you know, I've got a house, I've got a car, I've got a babe, I've got a daughter, I've got a family, I've got everything, okay? I still wake up and have days where I feel so fucked. And like, what an idiot I would be if I don't talk about that. You know, I had someone reach out to me recently. Oh, like, you've overcome ADHD. You know, how did you do it? I haven't fucking overcome ADHD.
You're still living with it every day.
I'm battling it every single day. And I said to this person, I'm like, please, please, please do not look at me as a success story in the way that look at me as someone that's that's still on a journey. I don't believe in my life that I will ever close the book. And I just made that up just now. You know, I've never said that before. I don't think I'm ever going to close the book. I think I'm going to live in pain for the rest of my life. I genuinely believe that, because living with ADHD and addiction, I genuinely believe that is, it's the reason there's, you see a lot of people going on the streets and a lot of people with addictions. I believe that I'm by going to the gym, by speaking, by eating healthy, but I believe that it helps. But the truth is, I'd never want people to look at me as being he's made it.
Yeah.
I want to be looked at as someone that's that's
succeeded despite it.
Yeah, and that's also humble, and that's also in wherever I get to in life, whether it be making money, not making money, who cares? It's still going to be at the utmost importance of me to help others and to be the person I am and have always been. And that's really, really important to me. And it comes from a place of it comes from a real place. It doesn't come from a place of climbing a ladder. It just doesn't. And it comes from, it comes from a real a place of as I've said, reality and living in there.
If you were to summarize the key things that you want people to take away from this episode, what would they be?
Be you, just be yourself. Don't change for anyone else. Find what you love. It will really, really, it'll be a lot easier, concentrate on the things that are going to make you happy as well. Happiness is the single most important thing ever. Okay? Because if you don't love yourself, you will stumble at one point. You'll stumble. That could be in a million different ways. Could be a divorce. Could be becoming an addict and being dependent on something. It could be going deeper into anxiety and mental health. It could be anything. I'm not saying that divorce won't happen, but do you know what I mean? What I am saying is that find what makes you happy and chase it and grab it. And you will, and from that, you will just see. You will just become a greater you. I think people that today, sadly, are doing a lot that is just societal norms.
Yeah. The problem we got in society today is that we have social media, which portrays things that
fake living. Yeah.
And also isn't very social.
No.
It's antisocial.
Yeah, agree.
You also have a system, like a school and education system, that is geared up towards telling people to go on to university and to go and get these, jobs in banking or in medicine or whatever they will be. Yeah. I mean, but that's going to get completely ripped up at some point very, very soon, because a lot of those knowledge worker positions are going to be taken by AI.
Correct.
So then I kind of feel like people will be forced to do things they love. And I've actually not spoken about this on the podcast yet, but it's something that I believe might happen. Have you been to Rome before?
No, I've been to a lot of Italy, but not to Rome.
But you notice that the buildings look amazing, like the architecture, the paintings, the sculptures. You'd love all that as well. I feel like in the UK and in these sort of very developed worlds that were chasing, GDP growth and money, we sort of lost sight of what
really matters.
Beauty looks like.
I completely agree.
So, and what we did is we. Coming back to the reason why Cano Water exists today, we went for the cheapest options, and we put stuff in plastic, and we started to build buildings that were square and ugly, because all they wanted to do was maximise profit.
Yeah, correct.
Well, what's going to happen if a lot of people's jobs are taken by AI? People have to start thinking about, what do I love doing?
Yeah.
My brother used to work, he's always been into fashion, but he used to work in fashion, but COVID happened. He's now an artist.
Yeah.
And seeing the way that his art is evolving over time and seeing how good he is.
Yeah.
naturally good
course.
at this, and now he's spending more and more time doing his 10,000 hours, and
100%.
he's building it up, and he's now becoming this incredible artist. Well, what's going to happen to what our buildings look like in the future if people start doing the things they really love? That at least is a hope of mine, is that we're almost forced into doing these more creative things, or the things that we love, because the traditional route of making money or getting a job is no longer available to us. I hope that's the case, because you'll have people like you who are you're doing it despite the societal expectations. But I hope that we can get back to a position where people are, just designing beautiful things and doing the things that they really enjoy doing.
Great.
Because if you have this time, you've got to spend it doing something that you love.
You've got to spend it wisely, and we've literally just got one life. So you don't want to be living like late life thinking, what have I missed out on? And I think there's never been a better time, I agree with you, for people to pivot and do something that they love.
Yeah, I mean, you've never had so much opportunity in the world.
Yeah, agree.
Technology, ideas, even like brainstorming with ChatGPT now, it's mental.
It's mental.
It is mental.
Mental.
And then luckily listening to people like you as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Because, podcasting as a platform, LinkedIn,
of course.
All these different things I use doing speaking events.
Definitely.
People are going to be inspired by that.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, look, it's been a pleasure, an
Thanks
absolute
for having me, Jay.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All good, my friend.